So one thing that a lot of people like to do besides play video games is actually make video games. And if you want to do that and you're not part of $1 million studio, you have a few options. One of them is to go onto Steam and download any number of the game makers that are available. And a lot of people use RPG Maker or Godot. In this specific case, we're going to talk about one called PGMMV, which is a little over a year old today. Is it worth a buy? Let's look at the pros and cons and figure it out. So one thing I want to point out is that I'm no stranger to any one of these development tools for making your own video games. Everything from RPG Maker to Visual Novel Maker, Ren'Py, etc. And in this specific case with PGMMV, I've managed to log in about 300, almost 400 hours plugging and playing with this program. And I gotta tell you, it's a lot more intuitive than when it was initially received back in 2019. So if you were lucky enough to catch this on sale, you're probably asking yourself, should I go ahead and purchase this game maker, especially when the market is currently dominated by RPG Maker, which has thousands of assets, a huge community. Will this newcomer PGMMV measure up? And hopefully, after going through some of the details I'm going to point out, hopefully that decision will be made a lot easier for you. And one thing I should probably mention right off the bat is that this is an incredibly powerful tool, and those of us that have tinkered with the engine for at least a little while will tell you that in many cases it's actually much more powerful than the entire RPG Maker suite. And what that means is that RPG Maker, it doesn't leave very much for interpretation. It says, these are how your sprites need to be laid out, this is how your UI is going to look. It doesn't give you very much in terms of pushing those boundaries, because it's telling you what the boundaries are. It's making it very easy for you, but it's not giving you a big opportunity to make your own changes. Now, what Pixel Game Maker does is it puts all of that in your hands. You tell the engine how you want it to be. Thing is that you have to build it. But that's easy as well. Pixel Game Maker uses visual logic, and essentially what you're doing is you are using you're coding, but you're coding with a visual kind of spaghetti sample that lays the code right out in front of you in a way that's easy to pick up. The learning curve is not very long. There's many tutorials that you can find on YouTube that will take you from zero knowledge to adept knowledge rather quickly. And what I'll do is, in the description of this video, I'm going to have a link to my friend Baz's tutorial pages so that you can get up to speed. It took me a few days just watching tutorials and following along, and now I would venture to say that, hey, it's definitely a lot funner to utilize than RPG Maker. And to add to that, the community is very active, rivaling that of RPG Maker as well. The Discord channel is alive, and if you have any questions, people will drop what they're doing to assist you in whatever it is that you're trying to figure out. There's also the Steam discussion forum where everyone posts their own reviews, people ask their questions, and the developers reach out and offer you their insight. Now, just like every other game engine out there, absolutely none of them are going to be absolutely perfect. And Pixel Game Maker is no different. One of the biggest cons is how new it is, and it's been out for a little over a year at the time of this recording, and that's not that much of a bad thing. When it was first released, it first came out early access, and of course it was loaded with bugs, and a lot of early reviews came out and said that this is not the greatest buy on the planet. 1 year was all it really took, and right now PGM is at a point where many of the bugs have been fixed. A lot more features have been added to it, and it is an extremely comprehensive engine by comparison to many of the other game engines out there. Now, again, I know that I've been saying RPG Maker like 100 times in this review. However, that is an absolutely necessary comparison. The market is positively dominated by RPG Maker, and I think that's another detractor here, is that RPG Maker has all of the assets in the world, to including its own DLC. It even makes creating your own characters extremely easy. Pixel Game Maker does not have that. So what you would have to do, and this is a very small complaint, because if you have to make your own assets, then that's actually a good thing. Then your games are not going to look like everybody else's, like in RPG Maker's cases. Small complaint, because you can just go on itch.io or any one of those other game dev market websites to either find a free asset or purchase one for sale and use it in your game. It also means that your game is going to look a lot more unique. So this con is actually kind of a plus. Another con, and I briefly touched this earlier in the video, is that you have to build everything yourself. And what that means is that, again, in RPG Maker, it's got a UI there for you. It's got a system where you can pick up items. It's got a system where you have your characters, how they level up, how they learn skills. That is all pre-built into the engine. And in Pixel Game Maker, none of that is built in. You have to tell it. But again, telling the engine how to do things is not that difficult. Now, there are some features that I just wish were in there. Like right now, you can't loop a parallax background, and for those of us that want to have like a looping background that just goes and goes for like infinite runner games, or if you want to have like string variables, like if you want to name your character, save that as a variable and have people refer to your character by that name, like string variables are not implemented yet. The looping backgrounds are not implemented. These are all advanced features. Right now, there's something called a development roadmap, where you can actually go in there and see what kind of features they are putting together and what is going to be in future updates, which is good, but I would like to have those updates. So with all things considered, weighing the pros and cons, you're probably going to ask yourself, should you buy Pixel Game Maker MV? And the things you're going to have to consider is, what is your knowledge in coding, and do you want your game to look like literally everybody else's? If you want them to look like everybody else's, then just go with RPG Maker MV. But if you want to have something professional, original, then you need to go with Pixel Game Maker MV. So the verdict on this is yes. If you have very little programming knowledge and you want the ease of making a game relatively simplistic with a small learning curve, then this is the engine that you need to go with, especially if you want a step up from the simplicity of RPG Maker and you want your project to look a lot different and a lot better than the average rigmarole that everybody uses. Now, my personal rating is 9 out of 10, and this is in comparison with all of the other game makers out there. That includes Godot, that includes Unity, that includes RPG Maker, that includes Game Maker 001. Of all of the game makers out there, I would rate this one at the top of the totem pole. Only reason why it doesn't get a 10 out of 10 is because of the cons that we discussed earlier. So that's it for now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check the description below for links to the Pixel Game Maker MV Steam page, the Discord, and other useful links for learning how to get adept in this engine. Till next time, see you later.